Somewhere right now, on more than 100 million computers around the world, a message is quietly waiting to appear. And when it finally does, it will not scream, it will not flash red, it will simply whisper that your machine is no longer protected. And by the time you read those words, it will already be too late. Because the company that built the operating system running your bank, your hospital, your school, and your office has already made its decision. And that decision was made without asking you, without warning you, and without caring whether you were ready. So, before we go one sentence further, I need you to sit with a question that should genuinely unsettle you. If one single corporation can reach into hundreds of millions of homes and switch off the software, people depend on every single day, and almost nobody even notices, then who actually owns the computer sitting in front of you right now, you or them? Hold that question, because everything I am about to show you is the answer, and it is far darker than you think. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to a time when Windows meant something completely different than it means today, back when buying software meant you actually owned it, when Windows XP became so bulletproof that entire industries built their futures on top of it, when there was no cloud login begging for your attention, no telemetry quietly phoning home, no subscription fee renewing itself in the background while you slept, Microsoft was not selling access back then. They were selling ownership, a physical, permanent, no strings attached promise that the machine on your desk belonged to you and only you. And that promise, as simple as it sounds, is what built the modern digital world. Offices, schools, governments, entire economies were constructed on the foundation of that trust. But trust like that does not get destroyed all at once. It gets dismantled quietly, one small decision at a time, until one day you look up and realize the thing you thought you owned was never really yours to begin with. And that day arrived with a date most people will never remember, but should never forget. Because on that day, the operating system still running on the majority of the world's computers was declared officially dead. No press conference, no farewell tour, just a final silent update pushed out to hundreds of millions of machines, and then complete and total silence. No more security patches, no more fixes, no more protection. An operating system depended on by well over half of Microsoft's own user base was simply switched off like a light in an empty room. And here is the detail that should genuinely disturb you. Independent tracking data showed that even in the final months before the cutoff, the overwhelming majority of Windows users were still running the very system being killed. This was not some forgotten relic nobody used anymore. This was the operating system still holding up the daily lives of hundreds of millions of real people. And Microsoft's answer to every single one of them was simple and unforgiving: upgrade or pay. Because the replacement, Windows 11, comes wrapped in hardware requirements so strict that a shocking number of perfectly fast, perfectly capable, perfectly working computers were instantly declared obsolete. Not because they broke, not because they stopped functioning, but because a corporation decided, on a spreadsheet in a boardroom, that they should no longer count. And if you wanted to protect your still functioning Windows 10 machine after the cutoff, Microsoft did build something for that, a program offering a single extra year of security updates. And the price of that extra year reveals everything about the psychology at play here. You could pay a small fee or burn loyalty points you had been quietly collecting for years, and this is the part that should make you pause, you could get it completely free. But only if you agreed to sign into a Microsoft account and sync your personal settings directly into their cloud, meaning even the free option was never really free. It was a toll disguised as a favor, a backdoor pulling you deeper into an ecosystem you never fully agreed to join. And the online communities who noticed this pattern gave it a name that stuck immediately. They called it a snooze button, not a solution, a temporary delay. Engineered to buy Microsoft enough time to herd you toward a new device or a permanent subscription. And this is the psychology you need to understand if you want to see the rest of this story clearly. None of this is ever framed as pressure. It is always framed as protection. Your computer is vulnerable. Stay safe, upgrade immediately. Fear wrapped so carefully in the language of care that most people never stop to ask who actually benefits from their fear. And the adoption numbers tell a story Microsoft desperately does not want you to notice. Independent analysts found that it took Windows 11 nearly a third longer to reach the same adoption milestone that Windows 10 hit years earlier. People were not rushing toward this new operating system out of excitement. They were being dragged toward it, kicking and screaming, every full-screen pop-up pushing a new device, every ominous warning about unprotected machines, every countdown clock ticking toward a forced deadline, all of it working together as one coordinated strategy. Move the masses off the thing they own and onto the thing they permanently rent. Because in this new version of Microsoft, you stopped being a customer a long time ago. Now you are simply a number on a conversion chart, a target to be moved from one column to another. And here is where this story turns from uncomfortable into genuinely disturbing, because the death of an old operating system was never really the main event. It was only the opening scene of something much bigger, A company quietly transforming itself from a business that once sold you a tool into a business that now sells you permission to use the device sitting on your own desk. And once you see that shift clearly, you will never be able to unsee it again. So let me show you the exact moment this hidden agenda became impossible to hide any longer. The moment loyal users who had defended this company for decades finally turned against it, and it started with a single feature that should have been an obvious warning sign from the very beginning. Imagine a tool built directly into your operating system that quietly takes a screenshot of literally everything you do on your computer, every private message, every password field, every personal document, every single window you ever open, all of it captured, stored, and indexed. So an artificial intelligence could search back through your entire digital life whenever it wanted. Microsoft called this a revolutionary leap forward in productivity. Security researchers called it something else entirely. They demonstrated in real time how easily this feature's local storage could be accessed, showing that any piece of malicious software slipping onto your machine could walk straight in and steal a complete, searchable visual diary of your private existence. The backlash was so immediate and so severe that the company was forced to delay the entire feature by a full year, and when it finally crept back onto people's screens many months later, it arrived turned off by default, buried behind extra security steps, treated by the very engineers who built it like something radioactive. And this is the question you need to sit with. Who actually asked for this? Who woke up one ordinary morning and thought, I really wish my computer would secretly photograph my entire life around the clock? Nobody asked for this. Not a single real user requested this feature, and that absence of demand is exactly the point. Because this was never a mistake born from good intentions gone wrong. This was the strategy itself. And instead of learning anything from that disaster, the very same company spent the following year repeating the exact same mistake everywhere else. An AI assistant was forced into the note-taking app, forced into the Paint program, forced into the file browser, forced into every corner of the productivity suite people use for actual work, complete with a floating button that literally covered the exact cells and words users were trying to edit, until the frustration became so widespread that people said the button alone was enough to make them despise the entire software update. A dedicated key was even added to physical keyboards, replacing a function key people had relied on for years. And the internet responded with a nickname that spread faster than any marketing campaign the company had ever produced. People started calling the entire ecosystem nothing but low-effort filler forced onto a billion machines, whether anyone asked for it or not, and the numbers behind this backlash are far more damning than any single angry comment could ever be. A former high-ranking executive who spent well over a decade inside the company later revealed that only a tiny single-digit percentage of subscribers to the premium productivity suite were actually paying to use the new AI features at all. The company's own web-based assistant was stuck hovering around a single percent of total market share, while a rival's competing product pulled steadily ahead. Hardware manufacturers spent staggering sums building specialized AI processing chips into millions of new laptops, only to discover, in their own internal admission, that most everyday buyers were not choosing new devices because of these AI features at all, billions of dollars invested, an entire corporate strategy reoriented, a brand plastered across every visible surface of your screen, and almost nobody actually using any of it. So ask yourself honestly, if the customers do not want it and the customers are not paying for it, then who exactly is this operating system being rebuilt for? The uncomfortable answer is that it is being built for shareholders who need to see a return on a massive financial bet, not for the millions of ordinary people typing, working, and living their daily lives on these machines. And when the public finally pushed back hard enough, the company gave its clearest confession yet. A senior executive went online and openly described the future of this operating system as something he called an agentic system, a computer designed to act on your behalf without waiting for your explicit permission every single time. The backlash was so overwhelming, so relentlessly negative, that the comments on his own statement had to be shut down entirely. And one single reply captured the mood of an entire generation of frustrated users perfectly. Nobody asked for any of this. In fact, everyone just wants to know how to turn it all off. That is not the sound of innovation being celebrated. That is the unmistakable sound of trust collapsing in real time, right in front of everyone watching. And the damage was not just emotional, it showed up directly in the financial reports. A promotional advertisement for the new AI assistant had to be quietly pulled offline after ordinary viewers instantly noticed the AI failing at a task as simple as making text bigger on a screen. And in a recent earnings report, the entire division responsible for the operating system, hardware, and gaming actually declined compared to the previous year, even while the company's separate cloud computing business continued to boom. And by early this year, something almost unthinkable happened. The company blinked. Internal reports confirmed that the operating system had, in their own words, gone off track. And they began quietly pausing new AI buttons, reviewing whether to strip some of these forced features out entirely, and pivoting toward what they now call Performance fundamentals, which is simply a polished corporate way of admitting they need to make the basic software actually work properly again, and think about how extraordinary that really is. A company worth over $1 trillion was forced into a public retreat, not by a lawsuit, not by a government regulator, not by a rival corporation, but by millions of ordinary users refusing to keep quiet, refusing to be treated as unpaid test subjects for a future. Nobody asked them to help build. That is real leverage. And for one brief, fragile moment, ordinary people actually used it. But do not mistake a tactical retreat for a genuine surrender, because while the company was busy publicly apologizing for the AI clutter on your desktop, it was simultaneously building something far more ambitious, somewhere else entirely, somewhere most people are not even paying attention to. A place where the very idea of a personal desktop computer stops existing altogether, and this is where the real story, the one almost nobody is talking about, truly begins. Because the next battlefield was never going to be your desktop. It was always going to be the cloud. Years ago, while most of the world was distracted by flashy new features, the company quietly launched a service that streams an entire copy of the operating system to you from a remote data center, meaning the actual computer you interact with does not exist on your desk at all. It exists on a server farm somewhere far away. And more recently, they released a small physical device whose only real job is to boot straight into that remote cloud computer, storing almost nothing on the device itself. Read that sentence again slowly. A computer deliberately engineered to own absolutely nothing. And at a major developer conference this year, the company's chief executive stood on stage and made the long-term direction unmistakably clear. The operating system itself, he explained, is evolving into something closer to an intelligent agent working on your behalf. And shortly after, they even launched a service giving AI agents their own private cloud sessions of the operating system, allowing artificial intelligence to click, type, and operate independently, carrying out tasks, supposedly on your behalf. And here is exactly why that detail should send a genuine chill down your spine. When your entire computing environment lives permanently on someone else's servers, you no longer own your software, you no longer own your files, you no longer own the digital workspace you spend your entire life inside. You're simply renting access to your own digital existence. And the moment you stop paying, or the moment the terms quietly change without your consent, all of it can be switched off in an instant, exactly the same way. An entire operating system depended on by hundreds of millions of people was switched off without warning. The pattern is identical, only far bigger in scale. First, an entire generation was moved from owning their software outright to renting it through endless subscriptions. And now, quietly, methodically, an entire generation is being moved from owning a physical computer to simply renting one. And this company is far from alone in that ambition. Other major technology giants are pursuing the exact same destination through slightly different paths, syncing everything through the cloud, moving entire digital lives permanently into a browser tab. The whole industry, almost in unison, is marching toward a future where your physical device becomes disposable, your monthly subscription becomes permanent, and your personal data quietly becomes the actual product being sold behind the scenes. So ask yourself honestly, right now, in this exact moment, when was the last time you truly, fully owned anything stored on your computer? Or has genuine digital ownership already quietly become nothing more than a distant memory from a different era? But here is where this story finally turns towards something genuinely hopeful, because the data now proves that people are waking up, and people are actually leaving, for the very first time in recorded history, an alternative operating system that was mocked and dismissed by mainstream users for literally decades, finally crossed a meaningful share of the desktop market in the United States. And globally, that same alternative climbed sharply within a single year, representing one of the fastest growth periods that free and independent operating system has ever experienced in its entire 30-year existence. On gaming platforms specifically, that same alternative recently hit an all-time record high. And while these percentages might still sound small compared to the giants dominating the market, they represent the fastest sustained growth this challenger system has ever seen. And every single new user represents someone who got fed up with exactly the pattern I just walked you through. Newer, friendlier versions of these alternative systems now look and feel remarkably similar to the operating system people already know, which means entire families are switching 3, 4, 5 computers at a time and simply never looking back. And it is not just individual households making this shift. Entire government institutions are doing it too. At least one regional government in Europe has already completely removed the dominant operating system from its public offices, replacing it entirely in the name of protecting digital independence and national data sovereignty. And this is no longer a fringe rebellion carried out by a handful of tech enthusiasts. This has quietly become a steady, deliberate exodus. And here is the empowering truth that massive technology corporations desperately do not want you to fully internalize. You genuinely have more power in this situation than you currently believe. your personal files, are probably already living safely in the cloud. Your email, your documents, your entire ongoing projects, most of what actually matters to you every day, already runs inside a simple browser tab, regardless of which operating system happens to be running underneath it, which means the operating system itself has never mattered less than it does right now. The wrapper around your digital life has become almost completely interchangeable. You're not actually trapped inside any single ecosystem. You were only ever made to feel that way through carefully engineered urgency and manufactured fear. The best technology in history never needed to cage its users to keep them close. It simply earned their loyalty through genuine value. And any company that forgets that fundamental lesson does not get to stay on top forever, no matter how much money it pours into flashy new features, no matter how loudly it markets an uncertain future to a public that never actually asked for it. So is the operating system that once defined an entire era of personal computing truly dead? Maybe not completely dead, but maybe becoming something almost unrecognizable, slowly drifting away from relevance the very moment it stopped genuinely listening to the exact same people who built its empire in the first place. And history has proven this lesson again and again with brutal, unforgiving clarity the moment any company forgets exactly why people fell in love with its product in the first place. That product eventually stops mattering entirely. This particular operating system once taught an entire generation of humanity how to use a computer for the very first time. And now, in what might be its final and most important act, it is quietly teaching us one last lesson that applies to every single industry watching closely. No company, no platform, and no empire, no matter how dominant it appears today, lasts forever. And perhaps, just perhaps, it is finally time to reclaim a small piece of the control so many of us spent decades quietly handing away without ever stopping to ask why.